What if the life that looks perfect on the outside, the career, the apartment, the travel photos, was the very life that was killing you on the inside? I know, because that was me. Smiling in the city while my chest ached with anxiety. Chasing success while every day felt like drowning. Today I live in a tiny farmhouse in the far north, surrounded by silence and snow. And the only reason I survived was because I walked away from the life I was told to want. Stay with me, because this is the story of how losing everything led me to finally find myself. My name is Anna. The air outside my window smells of pine and snow. The nights are long and silent, broken only by the wind across the trees. From here, life looks simple. But it was not always like this. For a long time, I lived in the city. I was the first in my family to go to college. Everyone was proud of me. I studied hard, and I did well. On paper, it looked perfect. A young woman in a good university, preparing for a career that promised stability and respect. My parents bragged about me at family gatherings. My friends said I was lucky, but I did not feel lucky. I did not feel at home. The city was loud, crowded, and full of pressure. Each morning I walked through streets filled with cars and strangers, and my chest tightened. At school, I pushed myself, smiling and nodding at the right times, pretending to fit in. But inside, I felt something breaking. It began as restlessness, a low hum of unease that never left. Then it turned into something heavier. Nights lying awake, heart racing. Days when I felt like I could not breathe. Doctors told me it was depression and anxiety. They gave me pills and said I would be fine. But I was not fine. I tried to force myself into the mold everyone expected. The promising student, the future professional, the young woman building a respectable life in the city. And the harder I tried, the more my body resisted. Chest pain, headaches, tears that came out of nowhere. On weekends, I escaped. I would take the bus out of the city and wander in the woods. It was only there, with the trees around me, that the noise in my head slowed down. Only there that I felt the ache in my chest ease. But Monday always came. And with it, the endless cycle of rushing, proving, pretending. I started to travel, spending every dollar I earned on plane tickets. I told myself I was chasing adventure, chasing culture, chasing beauty. And maybe part of that was true. But mostly I was running away. Running from the truth that this life was not for me. The farther I flew, the emptier I felt when I returned. The more exotic the place, the sharper the pain once I landed back in the city. One night I sat in my tiny apartment, staring at the ceiling. My suitcase was still on the floor from another trip, and I realized I was not really traveling to discover the world. I was traveling to escape myself. Because the version of me that the city required was killing the real me. I wish I could tell you I had a wise, thoughtful plan for what came next. But the truth is, it was impulsive. One ordinary morning I woke up and decided I could not do it anymore. I left my job. I said goodbye to my friends and family. And I moved north, to a place I had never been before. The decision shocked everyone. My parents begged me to reconsider. My friends laughed and said I was crazy. Even I could not explain it. All I knew was that I had to go. I packed a few bags and boarded a train heading north. As the city faded into the distance, I felt a strange mix of fear and relief. For the first time in years, I was not running toward another trip or another distraction. I was running toward the unknown. The cabin I found was small, tucked in the woods at the edge of a frozen lake. No central heating. No grocery store on the corner. No neighbor knocking at my door. Just silence. Just snow. Just me. The first days were overwhelming. I did not know how to light a wood stove properly. I did not know how to keep pipes from freezing. I had always been shy, and now I was completely alone in a region where I knew no one. Every simple task felt like a test. But as the weeks passed, something inside me began to shift. The air was harsh, but it was honest. The nights were long, but they gave me rest. The silence was intimidating, but it also gave me space to breathe. I had left behind everything I thought I was supposed to want, and in exchange, I began to feel alive again. The reality of life in the north hit me quickly. The first winter came like a wall of ice. The sun dipped below the horizon and did not rise again for weeks. At first I counted the days, waiting for light. Then I stopped counting, because it felt endless. The snow piled up higher than the windows. The wind rattled the cabin walls at night. There were moments when I sat in the dark and thought, what have I done? I missed the easy conveniences of the city. Hot water at the turn of a tap. Sidewalks cleared by someone else's hands. A store on every corner. Here, nothing was easy. If I wanted heat, I had to chop wood. If I wanted water, I had to haul it. If I wanted food, I had to plan ahead and sometimes go days without. There was no handyman to call when the roof leaked or when the pipes groaned. It was just me. And that was terrifying. Because I had never been good at asking for help. I had never been good at meeting new people. Now the choice was simple. Either I learned, or I would not make it. So I learned. I failed often, but slowly, my hands grew stronger. I learned how to split logs cleanly, how to fix a broken latch with whatever scrap I had, how to walk through deep snow without exhausting myself, how to read the sky to know when another storm was coming. The days were long, the work was hard, and yet something strange began to happen. The anxiety that had once ruled me started to loosen its grip. In the city, I had felt crushed by constant stimulation. Here, I was crushed by silence, but it was a different weight. A weight that built my muscles instead of breaking them. Each time I managed a small victory, keeping the fire alive through the night, shoveling a path to the lake, and repairing something with my own hands, I felt a flicker of pride. I was not weak. I was not broken. I was simply someone who had needed the right environment to grow. I had been told my whole life that I was too sensitive, too dramatic, too emotional. In the city, those words felt like chains. Here, they felt like truth finally finding a place to rest. Yes, I was sensitive. Yes, I felt things deeply. But out here, that sensitivity was not a curse. It was a compass. With no crowd to drown me out, I started hearing myself again. Not the anxious noise, but the quiet voice beneath it. And with that voice came something I thought I had lost years ago, my creativity. It began simply. One morning after a snowfall, the world looked so breathtaking that I reached for my camera. I had not taken photos in years. But as I clicked the shutter, something stirred inside me. I wandered through the woods for hours, framing branches, animal tracks, the shimmer of light on the snow. By the time I came home, my fingers were frozen, but my heart was alive. The next day I wrote about it. Just a short piece in a notebook. But then another, and another. Soon I was writing about the silence of winter nights, about the way the trees held secrets, about the loneliness and beauty of this life. It felt childish at first, like play. But then I remembered when I was a child, I had always created. Drawing, writing, making up stories, songs. I had buried all of that under years of trying to be serious and acceptable. Now, alone in the wilderness, that part of me came rushing back. The blog started quietly. A few posts shared online. No one really read them at first. But it didn't matter. For the first time, I wasn't creating to impress anyone. I was creating because it made me whole. Photography followed the same path. I hung a few prints at a small exhibition in town. People stopped, stared, asked questions. I felt a spark of connection I had not known in years. I started selling a few pieces, then more. It was never about the money, but it felt good to know others could see what I saw. Eventually, I began filming, capturing the quiet rhythm of this life. I had always been a quiet person, easily drowned out in groups. But through the lens, my voice was steady. The camera gave me a way to be heard. Not louder than others, but true to myself. This process was not magical. I still woke up some mornings with a heavy chest. I still felt overwhelmed when I had to drive into town or meet new people. But now, when the waves of anxiety came, I had a shoreline to stand on. The woods, the snow, the stillness, they balanced me. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like I had space. Space to feel without shame. Space to slow down without guilt. Space to listen to the part of me that had been whispering all along. Looking back, the city had not been wrong for everyone. It had simply been wrong for me. And it had taken breaking apart to understand that. Here in the north, with the cold pressing in, I was finally warming to myself. Here, with nothing but silence to guide me, I was finally hearing the truth. I had thought I came here to escape, but slowly I realized I had come here to return. Return to who I was before the world told me to be someone else. I used to believe that by moving to the wilderness, I had chosen a life of isolation. And for a while, that was true. The silence was absolute, the solitude unbroken. But something unexpected happened with time. The very place I thought would keep me alone slowly began to bring me closer to others. It started with small encounters. A neighbor who lived miles down the road, stopping by after a storm to check if I needed help. A local farmer inviting me to join a community dinner in the village hall. I was shy, hesitant, but I went. And little by little, I realized that even here, in this vast and frozen land, people found ways to come together. We called ourselves, half-jokingly, a northern family. We were a scattered group: artists, herders, carpenters, teachers, but bound by the same challenges. The endless winters, the heavy snow, the long nights that could swallow you whole if you faced them alone. Together, we shared advice, traded tools, offered a hand when someone's roof sagged under the weight of snow. I had spent years in the city feeling invisible in the middle of crowds. Here, with a handful of neighbors spread out across the wilderness, I finally felt seen. And then came something I had never expected: love. It happened in the quietest way, as most important things do. I met him at a small gathering by the fire, a man who, like me, had chosen this life far from the noise. He was gentle, steady, and carried a kind of peace I had only begun to find in myself. At first we were just friends, exploring the forest together, helping each other with the endless chores of rural life. But the more time we spent side by side, the more I realized I had not only found companionship, I had found a home in another soul. Loving him was unlike anything I had known before. In the city, relationships had felt like performances, two people trying to fit into roles. Here, there were no roles, no expectations, only the raw truth of who we were. I could be my sensitive, emotional self, and instead of shrinking away, he welcomed it. He too loved the silence of the snow, the rhythm of simple days. For the first time, I felt my heart was not too much for someone. It was exactly enough. Together, we built a life. We bought a small house, surrounded by trees and fields. We stacked firewood, planted a garden, made plans that were not about climbing ladders but about living simply. We laughed at the idea that more reindeer than people roamed around us. And yet, in that unlikely place, I had found both community and love. This was the climax of my story, though I did not see it at the time. After years of searching across countries and cities, after endless flights and countless attempts to fit in, I realized I had been searching for roots. I had thought roots were something given to you at birth, the place where you were born, the expectations handed down by family and society. But that was never true. Roots are not fixed. They are alive. They grow wherever you choose to plant them. And when I dared to plant mine here, in the silence of the north, they finally took hold. I look back now and see how lost I once was, traveling to escape myself, pretending to belong to a life that suffocated me. I thought I had no roots because I could not thrive in the soil I was born into. But the truth is, I simply needed to find a different ground, one that was simple, one that gave me space, one that allowed me to breathe and to create. Life is not perfect here. There are still long days when anxiety creeps back in. There are still nights when the cold feels unbearable. There are still errands, bills, and frustrations. But now, they are balanced by silence, by space, by love, by a community that holds me up when I falter. And more importantly, they are balanced by the knowledge that I am living a life that is truly mine. Not the life I was told to want. Not the life that looked good from the outside. But the life that heals me, challenges me, and lets me grow. If you are listening to this, maybe you know that restless feeling, that quiet voice inside you that whispers, "This isn't it." Maybe you've tried to ignore it, bury it under work, money, travel, or distractions. I know I did. But I learned that the voice does not go away. It only grows stronger the longer you silence it. So here is what I can tell you, from the bottom of my heart. That voice is worth listening to. It might lead you to unexpected places. It might pull you away from everything familiar. It might scare you, but it could also lead you to the beginning of your real story. My story is not about abandoning society or living some perfect fairy tale in the woods. It is about choosing a simpler ground where my roots could finally grow. It is about learning that sensitivity is not weakness, but strength in the right soil. It is about finding love in the most unlikely corner of the world. And it is about realizing that sometimes the life you are expected to have is the very one that keeps you from truly living. I chose simplicity not because it was easy, but because it was real. And in that choice, I found myself again.